All right. So today we're going to be talking about why forced relationships, friendships fail, particularly in the context of raising some small humans. And this is really directly connected to this idea of why kindness backfires, why that enforced kindness backfires. So, Christina and I are both parents to some pretty cute and inquisitive and fun little kids and some bigger kids. And this is all an ongoing experiment that we're having with understanding ourselves, our values as parents, and then understanding how to parent with values. So, how are we living and modeling our values? And then, how are we teaching our kids to know and understand themselves through the lens of these values? And then what is society telling us about how we should do this, and how are we going to make this our own?
Yeah, it's a consistent struggle or challenge, especially being a parent on raising the proper human being to be a good adult. And at what point do you draw the line to allow them to figure out um, how to be kind and what kindness means to them as an individual versus having to impose that your view onto them?
Absolutely. And I've got some emerging ideas about how we create these shadow values, these values that make us act up as these are the values that are imposed on us, that we pick up because we're told they're our values, but they actually aren't our intrinsic values. And I'm sort of learning as we go, but I have a pretty strong opinion that's how we end up with some of these values that that don't serve us very well because they actually aren't our values. They're actually ones that society gave us or their parents gave us. So I'm actually really curious about how we can learn about a little bit more about that. Let's just talk about what each of us mean about when we talk about kindness. And I was thinking about this through the lens, each of us through the lens of our what our top values are, because kindness isn't one of my top values, right? And just so I was like, where does this land? Where does kindness land for me? And so the top values that I have that absolutely are connected to kindness are non-judgment, love, connection, respect, and courage. And these are all connected to kindness, even though kindness isn't on the list, but um, I'm kind because I'm non-judgmental. I love, it is like who I am, and that extends into acts of kindness. I love connection, and you can't be unkind if you have like a desire for connection. And because I'm respectful, um, I am kind and courageous. Courage is really important, and kindness is connected to courage for me as well. How about you?
I love that.
Hmm.
For me, I'm the same way. I don't have kindness as my top five values, but it is intertwined in a lot of other values that I do have. My top value is authenticity, and I really feel that kindness plays a part into that because if you can be your authentic and genuine self, then that is opening up your heart and bringing down the walls for other people. So that in itself is very kind versus putting up that mask or that front and or that shallow conversation. So that's where that in-depth active listening comes into play and just that connection piece.
It seems like that's a kind value as well, kind to yourself value. If
Yeah.
you are like driving to an authentic life, that feels so generous and kind to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. My other values would be includes belonging, inclusivity, love, respect, as well as connection. So again, we've all had the areas where or situations where we might have felt out of place going to an event. And it's always nice to feel part of the group. So whether it's, striking a little conversation or making sure that somebody has a place setting or that they have water, that all of that just sound it to me is kind because you're making them feel welcomed and invited and included. Um, love and respect is the same as what you had mentioned too, Kareen. I mean, if without either of those, you're not really kind to somebody. It's like quite the opposite.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's fake.
right. And then connection is another one of my top values. And again, you can't really be unkind when you're making those authentic connections and really wanting to get to know someone and making them feel like they're important or what they have to say is important and they're valued. So that's how I would define kindness. It's not necessarily just a term or a dictionary term, but it's really intertwined with a lot of other values.
Hmm. Absolutely. Do you have any examples of, in a parenting context or any context, where that's kind of come up? Like, I think there's this conversation that we have around, if you're a good mom, then you're raising a kind kid. And that's a really, it seems a little less overt right now, but when my daughter was really young, that was like all the rage in the mommy blogs. And I'm raising the kindest kid. No, I'm raising the kindest kid. And we're having a kind kid, you know,
War.
championship. And I'm like, what are we winning here? But it was very, very acute. And I was like, I don't belong in this conversation. I have a very strong, and I think I've talked about this on other podcasts, but my belief that I have one job as a parent, and that's to build self-esteem in my child. That is it. If I do nothing else, rock solid, I got that one. And it's funny how every parenting decision kind of is that over and over and over. Um, and that also sort of is, don't raise an asshole, and make sure that she's going to be a functional adult. Like, it's all connected, but it all comes under the heading of, you know, release a child into the world that has good self-esteem, and everything kind of takes care of itself. And that really, like, I want to build a good adult keeps me focused. So I don't think that kindness is the best adult. I feel like that leaves her a little underprepared. I think there's other things that I can do to build her up to be a good adult, um, that will get her to be a good adult, but kindness isn't the guide.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree. And it's so funny because like talk about non-judgment and everybody's always comparing their own kids against each other and it's just it's awkward and weird. And I'm the same way. I try and avoid those conversations as best as I can. Um but you're absolutely right. And I think that there's a fine line between kindness and then being a people pleaser. And there is so many adults that I know that are doormats. And and it's not healthy because it's not promoting self-love and self-care to that individual. So I do have an example. It's actually a recent one. For those of you who haven't listened to our podcast before, I have a 5-year-old daughter as well as a 2-year-old son. But I'm going to just talk about my 5-year-old because I've been doing little experiments to try and figure out what her values are and really help her kind of get to know herself and her identity. So the example that I want to talk about today is satisfying other people's wants over your own. Because I find that a lot of people mistake kindness for people pleasing, essentially.
Yep.
But not not satisfying yourself either, because that's portrayed as selfish. How dare you put yourself before others, right? Uh, and that's where that forced kindness comes into play. So my daughter, actually, she had a bunch of stickers, brand new stickers that she had. She was really excited about having them, and she decided that she needed to give these stickers to her friends and her family because it would make them happy. And she wanted to be kind, right? Kindness is very, very important to her because she has self-identified herself as being a kind person. So she almost has set the standard that I have to prove that I am kind on a continual basis. So in this instance, she figured, okay, so I have to give uh, either items or I have to do something for someone in order for them to think that I'm kind, right? We've had these conversations about what kindness looks to her. And so anyway, she's been giving out these stickers, and here she had one sticker left, and she didn't give a sticker to dad yet. But she also really wanted to have a sticker for herself because these were brand new stickers for her, right? And so I had told her, I said, well, Freya, I'm sure dad would be more than happy to let you keep your own sticker. Or if you would like, I can give my sticker to dad. And we had the conversation, well, but mom, then you won't have something and you won't be happy. And I said, yes, but do you want it? And she's like, well, yeah, of course I want a sticker. It would make me feel happy. And I said, okay, but so what you need to understand is it's really important that you're also kind to yourself. It's so nice that you want to do things for other people, and it doesn't mean that you have to not give the same thing to you. And I said that there's power in other types of kindness. So we talked about the power of um, the thought of an action. So the fact that you even thought about wanting to give something to somebody, that in itself is kind. And you don't actually have to carry through the action. So I said, and that's essentially the most important thing is you need to be kind to yourself first and foremost, because there's only one of you. And you it's the thought that truly matters. And if you want to tell somebody that you thought of them and this is what you wanted to do, but you only had one of them and you really wanted to keep it, that in itself would brighten their day if that's what if that is important to you to show that you are a kind person. So the moral of the story is kindness isn't about you suffering for the sake of others. It's really important that you are being genuine to yourself and your wants and needs, and also you can be mindful of others. But there's so many different ways to be kind, and it doesn't mean that you have to give up everything you have.
Truly, truly, truly. Wow. Christina, that is such a deep conversation to have with a 5-year-old little soul. Where was she in this conversation? How did she take that?
You could tell the little gears were going,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, I told her, I said, no, I'm going to give you back my sticker, and I am telling you that I am happy. And I love that you thought of me. But if you really wanted to give it to dad, here you go. And so when she came home and she gave it to dad, and she's like, the most important thing is that I thought about doing this. So you could just tell like she now, let's talk about, not forcing values on people. So just because I said it, I'm still going to be working out having a little bit more conversations.
Absolutely.
But
This is a long-term conversation you're going to be having with her for a while. You've got time to
exactly,
refine it.
exactly. But I think in that moment, she's realizing that it it's because her want is so deep for these stickers, and it's everybody has to have the same want. Like it's really, really important. But realizing that sometimes other people can show the same kindness back, and by giving up me giving up the sticker, I'm still happy. I'm not super sad and upset that I don't get it. I'm more than happy to give it back to you so you could be happy, right? And so it's a mutual thing.
Yeah.
And so I haven't gotten there yet, but I really want to talk about um, reciprocation, because there's also
Mm,
people that unfortunately use and abuse your kindness because they know that you are going to give and give and give and never expect anything in return. And that is the line that you cross where you become now a people pleaser and a doormat, because they will take advantage of you and
yeah,
it's not right. And that's where you have to protect yourself.
truly. And when you've got a taker and a giver in some kind of relationship together, it's confusing for the giver because it feels good to give to the taker. And when they take with such gratitude and excitement and joy, and you give and they're excited to take it, and you give and they're excited to take it, it's great. It seems like a really great relationship until you have nothing left to give. And that's a really, to be teaching that at a 5-year-old level that you can build on and deepen that already ingrained identity. She is going to find a new way to be a giver that is healthy for herself and for that taker. Like she can still be in a relationship with a taker with boundaries and standards for herself and boundaries for them.
Yes,
Yet.
absolutely. And it's so funny because again, I know a lot of adults that are givers, and when they're on the other end where they don't have anything left, and we extend an invitation to, like, well, come stay with us until you're back on your feet or do whatever, right? Just like an act of kindness. It's so funny to see their face, like, what? you you're being kind to me? Like, what do you want from me then? Like, what do I have to do for you to give me whatever it is you're offering? And it's just like, oh my gosh. Like, let's like take a beat here. And this is actually what it feels like to the person that's receiving, that you have been doing this in the entire time. It's time for you to now get that in return. But and that's why I feel like this topic is so important, especially with your children, because they can grow into that adult where they will
Yeah,
give and give and give, and then have no, money left over to even have a food or a shelter over their heads. And are they going to have a person to help them out? Because usually when you're in that give take relationship, that taker isn't going to extend anything to you.
that's right. They'll take until it's all gone and then they'll go away.
Exactly.
Yeah. And where else are you going to learn that stuff except at home?
Hmm.
And more often than I'm comfortable with, it doesn't happen. The teaching doesn't happen at home. And we're part of that uh, experience, and we're part of ending that cycle, you and I.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so I have a bit of a different, same idea, a little bit different. Um, uh So I know that how do I even say this? I know that I'm kind of a shit, especially as a kid. Like I know that I needed to go through um I was kind of a selfish child with some of my closest friends, and not terribly. Like I was also very loving and like in alignment with all my values, but kindness wasn't part of my skill set. And I also had a mom that taught me how to be arrogant, how like she was very much like, she taught me some funny things, I'll just put it that way. And I really needed to have the experiences in my life. I actually had like great friendships and happy experiences, but I know there were times that I can reflect on where I'm like, that was cold. That was a bit, that was hard what I did there. And I have a really great memory that just plagues me of all these things, but I know I needed to experience that. And I never wanted step into another human's life, never mind my kid, and say, don't have those experiences because she might need them. You I don't want to take away critical experiences that for me formed who I am. I had to experience that to say I choose something different. I had to learn those ways. I had to have that dysfunctional experience with my mom teaching me some strange things in order to say, you know what, I'm going to raise me better now. I'm older and I'm going to raise me better than that. And I would never take that away from her. That said, I can also, there was a couple of years ago, an experience where there was a friend in my kid's friend group and she was being a little ousted. Like, where's this friend? Why isn't she coming around anymore? And it was a kid that I really liked. She was quirky little kid, but I really liked this kid because she was quirky. And she and I used to have like really great conversations, right? And I got the other two. So there's three of them, and this one kid wasn't coming around much anymore. And I got the other two in the car with me, and I was like, hey, we're going to talk about this. I'm like, hey, you guys, where's this other one? Where's friend number three? And they said, we just don't talk to them anymore. And I was like, you need to take care of your friends. You guys are a trio, and you need, right? Here's some judgment. Here's some like things coming out of me saying you need to take care of that kid, or like it's not nice to um disinclude them. That's totally a word. Uninclude that child. And I gave them a bit of a little, not a intense, but a bit of a riot act, right? Rather than the riot act. And they said, you know what? We get to make our decisions. And they were quite emboldened
Wow.
together. We get to decide who we're friends with. And I was like, dirt. Oh, sure, absolute backpedaling. Yes, of course you can. And I was like, and I know you wouldn't do that without a good reason. So finally, I'm like, okay, let's maybe extend some grace here. Why why was it important to not have this friend in your group anymore? So they actually had a really intense reason that this one had sort of changed a lot and was making some strange overtures to one of their brothers and was creating some really awkward situations and was forcing, like almost forcing a relationship, trying to force a relationship with this the other friend's brother. And they were like, there's something's gone weird, something's gone wrong, and it won't stop. We've tried to address it and it just won't stop. And we needed to protect the brother. It was an older brother too. That was freaking
How
hilarious.
sweet.
It was really sweet. And this kid couldn't get around his house for goodness sakes. So they had to just say, like, you're not coming over anymore. And it just became a struggle. And I was like, at the end of it, I was apologizing to them for one not going in with this assumption of their competence and assuming that they didn't have a good reason, that they hadn't thought this through, and assuming that they were being unkind. And so that was a really important moment for me to take away that judgment of you guys have always got to be kind and inclusive and just let them make their choices. They're smart kids, they're intelligent, they often need guidance. But so what I did was I stayed with them and asked them about why and let them walk through it. And ended up reinforcing that I understood that they were making the best decision they could. And I also really missed that other kid. And I really, really let them know. And I didn't get my way. And that's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay.
But
It
how,
was interesting.
like, that must have been a really proud moment for you, though, to know that your child could stand up for themselves and say, like, yeah, no, like, I do have a right to choose who I'm friends with and not, like, that's a huge win. Like, talk about self-esteem right there.
Oh, I was so proud of them. And they were like holding each other. Like, no, wait a minute, right? That thing. And they were really standing up with each other and for each other. It was cool.
That is really cool. Wow. And it is true. Like we all know that we all evolve and change, and like God knows I've cut people out of my life too because they've just turned toxic, or we just veered to different paths in our lives, and um and we kind of forget that that also happens with young kids too.
Yeah. And the audacity, if somebody said to me, like, you can't not be friends with them, I would be shocked. Actually, it's happened to me in my life. And I was like, oh, no, I get to choose my friends. And my daughter handled it with more grace than I did. That's why. Um, yeah, I was really proud. Yeah. And if I'm looking at that, like, building self-esteem as my objective, yeah,
And so
absolutely.
what would be just hypothetically, what would have been the risk if like what you had said really like pressured them into trying to be friends with them again and and things just weren't working? Like what could be potentially the risk in that?
Oh, I know. I would have that was a pivotal moment with those two kids where I built trust instead of abandoned trust with them. And to this day, we still have really open, intense conversations as they get older, less often. And I know there's lots of things that business anymore, but that I know that I built trust with them that day, if that's what you mean.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, I could have really messed it up if I
Yeah.
had insisted, or if they had capitulated, been or like, because it wouldn't have been an honest capitulation. It would have been like, okay, and then they would have done what they wanted to do,
Right.
as they should, right? As we've learned in this example, they had a good reason. But if I hadn't stayed with them to learn what the reason was, um, they would have learned how to be inauthentic with me or with adults, or how to be inauthentic under challenge,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, oh, that brings me back to my childhood. There were so many things I wasn't allowed to do based on my own parents' experiences that I'm like, well, fuck that. I'm gonna go do it on my own and I'm going to get that experience and I'm gonna do it behind your back. And
Absolutely.
yeah, there's a lot of power in establishing that like a relationship with your kids based on tr mutual trust and respect. And that's just, I'm so happy that you have that with your kids. That's, yeah.
Yeah, it was really important. And I keep doing it. I keep having these conversations where I get to a point where I'm like, huh, that's not what I would have done. And you did that, or you're gonna do that. Let me know how it goes. That's a you experience. I can't wait to hear how it happened, how it rolls out, or what happens. Check back in. Let me know. Keep me apprised.
Yeah, and if it goes wrong, then they might seek out, like, has this happened to you before? And so then you can offer that experience, like your own personal experience to them that allows them to make an educated decision later on.
Totally. And the older the kiddos get, the more complex the decisions are, the more complex the relationships are. And that conversation I had several years ago was money in the bank for today, because I am still um, in on the conversations. Like I said, not all of them, and I'm sure there's lots that she doesn't share with me, as she should, because privacy is a thing. And I don't have time in my life for every single thought. Oh my God, there's so many. Right? I gotta think my own thoughts. And so yeah, that was a money in the bank moment.
Yeah.
And I keep making those deposits by I've learned to trust her. That's the thing. She's learned to trust me, but I've learned to trust her.
Mm, that's really lovely. I that brings me to like that whole forcing friendship component brings me back to like even just in schools, right? Schools, it's very much anti-bullying. Everybody has to be each other's friends. You all have to play well together. You all
Yeah.
have to be, um uh sharing and caring and including everybody at all times.
Yeah.
And I feel that at a certain age it's good to teach your kids because yes you do need to have you need to learn the social cues and how to get along with others and learn that there is different personality types and all that kind of stuff, right? And
Yep.
and of course sharing is important, but even with my daughter, I mentioned this in a I think in our Patreon episode when we went into this topic a little bit more in depth, that there's a book out there called the Not So Friendly Friend, and I
Mm,
read that to my daughter because there's obviously some kids that are mean, especially girls. They can be a little challenging, a little more challenging than boys, in terms of, saying hurtful things and pitting people against each other and blah, blah, blah.
it's called relational bullying. There's the default for girls, as opposed to
Oh,
like fisticuffs or like aggressive physical bullying. It's relational bullying is what you're just describing is the heading for that.
okay. Thanks for clarifying that. And yeah, so this book is really, really great because it talks about how you establish boundaries. And if you have a friend that's not being friendly to you and being mean, you say, if you're choosing to be nice to me, then I will play with you or I will, then this relationship is going to be intact. But if you're choosing to not be nice to me, then I am going to walk away. Right. And I'll play with you when you're ready to be nice to me. That's essentially what this book is about. And so funny enough, my 5-year-old, she was 4 at the time, she was practicing it at school, right? Because we talked about boundaries and we talked about how you still have to protect yourself. Like you deserve to be treated with love and kindness, right? And so as she's doing this, and of course, she's probably not using the right language, and she's probably just saying, I'm not going to play with you anymore, or not going to be your friend, right? Because those are the trigger words kids use. But she got in trouble by her teacher. She got scolded, and and she came in tears to me saying, "Mom, like I'm doing exactly what this book is saying and that we talked about, but the teacher got me in trouble." And so I had to have this conversation and pull the teacher aside and say, like, look, this is what we're doing, and she might not be using the right language, so she's going to need your help to make these boundaries, but it's really important that you're not forcing this mean person to play with her because she has a right to be treated with respect. And if she's not getting it, then,
Yes.
right? So, and of course, this teacher's like, oh, I had no idea. Like, okay, well, yeah, thanks for letting me know. And after that, she's never gotten in trouble for doing it. But it's so odd that, um, the teacher would still force
Yep.
everybody to be friends, even if they aren't being nice to each other.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? When Sam was in daycare, it was a really good daycare. And when they had these conflicts, they had a paradigm that they would go to, not to the bully, like the instigator, let's say, because
Hmm.
I think that's a heavy label, especially for little people. The instigator, and instead of going to them where they're giving the attention to the instigator, they don't do that. They go to the person who was on the receiving end, not victim, receiving end, and they would say, "How did you feel about that? And what would you have preferred? And I'm going to help you tell that person what wasn't okay and what you need instead."
Wow.
And
Amazing.
these were like, this was the toddlers, is where they started this. And it went up to like prior to kindergarten. It was incredible. And even to this day, she's still like drawing on this, not having any idea, thank goodness, where it came from. And it's just part of the skill set now. But I think we need that. It got lost as soon as she went into um, the school system, because it's always looking at the perpetrator, the instigator, as we need to address this behavior with that person.
Yeah.
And at that age, it's still too young for them to be like harshly, intensely targeted for, you need to re-establish that behavior. But when you do it the other way around, the energy goes to the person, so that instigator is like, hey, they're being left out of the energy. They're
Yeah.
not receiving the energy. And kids that are starving for any attention go to where any energy is. And
Yes.
that's how
Good
we
or bad.
end up, good or bad. Exactly. So if we're able to understand that at a young age, attention is a commodity that they crave, connection is a commodity that they trade in. Where are we putting our energy? And let's be intelligent about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And um the fact that they're giving those the person on the receiving end, the kid on the receiving end, the skill set to be able to voice like this is what I need and I didn't get it. That's so big because that is where that self-esteem component and that self-care component is drawing from, right? Like
Yeah.
you need to be able to say what you did was not okay, and next time can we do this?
Mhm.
And I know even adults that can't do that.
Oh, I know. And I know that because we teach this. This is what they were doing was teaching the formula, the vocabulary, the template for assertive communication.
Yeah.
And now here we are teaching adults how to do that same thing. Because I value this thing, I need to have that brought to me. I need you to give that to me in this way. And you don't have to, but that's what I want. And if you choose not to after I've shared, then I'm free to choose what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how VBL really does tie into this because even even just the know your values course itself, if you don't know what kindness means to you or other values or what your top values are, this is a really great tool to be able to get to know yourself so you can start with this communication, right? Because again, this isn't taught in schools. A
Yes.
lot of adults aren't prepared for not only themselves, but to teach their own kids too. So then you have more people growing up and not really realizing what it is that's important to them, why they're getting triggered when something
Yeah.
happens, and then also how to actually encourage change that will allow you to live more of a values-based life.
It's so true. And it's not just enough to intellectually know your values. Like, now I have my top five, off I go. You have to know how that affects you, how that changes or how it's connected to your thoughts and your emotions and your actions. in all areas of your life. And that's what Know Your Values course really does, is help you make those connections between that and the values are those intrinsic motivators, whether you know them or not, whether you put a name to them or not, they're forcing your thoughts and forcing your emotions and forcing your actions. So know them and then understand how they affect you and influence you and drive you. And then you can understand how to put those thoughts together to say, this is who I am. This is my um what is it called when you have you're driving your when you get a new car, your maintenance manual. Like, here is my what is it when you open the little door and it has the book in there? What's that
Yeah.
called?
Yeah.
Work with me here.
Your instruction manual. Yeah.
Totally, your car, yeah, your owner's manual.
Mm.
Here's how I work, and if you don't know, the people around you, they sure as hell don't know, because they don't know even what's motivating them. And the more we can get closer to understanding that and loving ourselves because of it, understanding, accepting, sharing from that place, man, that's a different world.
Absolutely.
That's some good stuff right there.
Yeah, this was such a good conversation. Yeah, for those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about your values, or how you can assertively communicate them, please check out our website, valuesbasedliving.com. Listen to more of our podcasts, become a Patreon member, because that's where you really get the juicy meat and potatoes that we dive in deep to uncover. Or you can reach out to us via email if you have any questions.
Yeah.
We also have a free monthly Zoom Q&A that we do based on a specific topic where anybody is free to bring their own questions or examples or situations if you want to digest them a little more. This is your opportunity to talk to certified mediators for free. So definitely take them up on this.
I love that. Thanks, Kristina.